let's go for a ride. So the first thing you notice when you go ahead and get on this bike, as I said, if you see, there's quite a lean angle on it. So you're going to feel the weight when you go to pick it up off the side stand. It's nothing that is that drastic, just something to take note of. So, I had mentioned that in walking around, so just something to note. I don't care how long you've been doing this. I've been riding for, 21 years now. I still get excited when I fire these bikes up, feel those engines come to life. I really enjoy that. Let's get on with this owner review of this BMW S1000 XR. Pretty view down there. So as we get started here, I think it's worth pointing out that, each owner or each rider is going to be a little bit different. I'm 5'10", 160, 165, as I've said in the past. And, what I want and need out of a bike for the style of riding and my body might be a little bit different than the next person. But I think it's important to keep that in mind when you watch these reviews. I know for me personally, I try to watch as many as possible. So I'm going to try to hit everything as we get going here that I can think of. So first thing, we're going to start with the saddle. It is one of the two most often criticized areas on this machine, and it is true. It is very scooped out, the saddle is, and so it kind of holds you in one riding position. And depending on the style of riding that you're doing, it could be a negative. But I got to be honest with you. I said in my first impression video that I'm 39, going to be 40 this fall. I've got a couple of lower and mid-back issues or a history of those. This seat doesn't cause me any trouble. I mean, it does hold you in one position. The one thing I was concerned about most is, you see me? No, you don't see me. The one thing I was concerned about most when I picked this machine out was how I would fare on it for much longer stretches because of that fixed riding position and it putting pressure on the pressure points. And I can say, I can push myself to the back of the saddle a little bit. So at 5'10", I've got just a tiny bit of room, enough that I can get the pressure off those pressure points for a little bit of time. But you do kind of, just kind of slide right back towards the gas tank. So it is a fairly fixed riding position, but it's a comfortable riding position. I will give it that. I'm going to talk a lot today, compare this bike to its competitors. I'd say the main competitors for this bike are the 1260S or 1260S Touring Ducati Multistrada, and probably the 1290, the KTM 1290 Super Duke GT. Let's start with the curb weight on those bikes. This bike weighs in just under 500 pounds at 498 pounds. And the KTM comes in at 503, and the Multistrada is 518. So the BMW is going to take the check mark there for the lightweight. At 498 pounds, it is still quite a lot of motorcycle, but little bunny. But it's certainly the lightest of its competitors. Bikes that I looked at when I went to make my purchase, I actually didn't consider the KTM for a couple of reasons. Primarily, there is no dealers near my area. It's a very limited dealer support. And, if I line those three bikes up, it's kind of, the KTM, from what I have read and what I have viewed, is very much, it's very powerful. The engine I hear nothing but great things about. I'm not sure it's going to do it for me over 4 hours, 5-6 hours in the saddle. And I think this kind of splits the difference between the KTM and the Multi. And the Multistrada falling on the more comfortable end of that. But the three bikes I actually looked at were this bike, which obviously I purchased as I'm doing a review on it now. The Multistrada, I was actually looking at a 2018 1260S Touring Multistrada that was a demo that was left over. And the other bike I looked at was the Triumph. It was a 2019 Triumph 1200 Tiger XRT. I was really interested in that bike. Slightly different, obviously, compared to the Multi and the KTM in this, but I was really interested in that. I'll talk a lot about those bikes. I'll probably mostly compare this to the Ducati, and that is primarily because I have the most knowledge of the Multistrada, having owned a 2017. About 10,000 miles I put on that bike before I had some issues with my neck and arm and needed to park all my machines for a while, so that bike got sold. So doing a lot of comparisons to that particular machine. The next area that this bike, in terms of criticisms, often receives has to do with vibrations. Everybody who seems to tune into a review or try to find something to read about the 2020 S1000 XR is really interested to find out about the vibrations. And those are the kind of things that, you know, even if you're fortunate enough, like I was, to be able to find a dealership that's going to let you go out and do a test drive on the exact bike that you're looking for, it's really hard to sort those things out over a short test drive. So hopefully this review can help out with that. What I can say is, you know, whether or not you owned a first generation and thought it was a problem, BMW certainly thought it was, and to go about rectifying that, they put some rubber inserts in the bar risers. The long and the short of it is this. You know, I think the bigger issue was probably when you're at highway speeds, just kind of droning on. And I can say that, you know, I've done at least one full gas tank on the highway and at highway speed, and I had no issues with vibrations. I think they've got that problem sorted out. If that's something you're concerned about, I don't think that you need to be. I do realize that some of this is, well, most of it is subjective and rider specific, but as far as that goes, I think BMW really did a good job with that. They've got the vibrations sorted out, and that's not going to be an issue. So that is taken care of. Let's talk a little bit about the engines on these bikes. So this bike has an inline 4-cylinder engine. It's got a 999cc displacement. It is putting out, I think BMW specs it at 166 horsepower. What I will tell you is it is not hurting for power anywhere in the rev range, which is fantastic. Go ahead and switch those modes up. So yeah, it's definitely not hurting for power. And I know that that's often a criticism of your inline 4-cylinder engines, is that they can kind of be dogs down low. That's just not the case here. I am really pleased from the bottom, mid, all the way to the top of the rev range. Since my last video, you know, I've had my break-in service done. I have revved it out a little bit. You are rev limited until you have that break-in service done on these bikes, at which point they will open up the rest of the rev range. I believe before you get the break-in done, it is limited at about 9,000 RPMs, which is probably good anyways, not to be flogging on your new bike before it's broken in, although I know that, you know, most of that's kind of older science, but nonetheless. So plenty of power on this bike. When I went to purchase this, I did a test drive of the 2018 Multistrada that I spoke about, and the significance there is that 2018 Multistrada was the first year on the Ducati that they went to the 1260 engine. The engine on the Multistrada, very torquey, very different feel than riding this BMW. I would actually say that I think it's probably going to come down to personal preference as far as which you prefer. Both engines are excellent. I would give the nod to the BMW here. I would have said that prior to riding both of them, but the fact is, this guy makes plenty of power throughout the rev range, and I thought that it would really suffer being a 4-cylinder engine down low, you know, and it had to build a little bit and kind of be racing around to get that power, but there's plenty of it. So I really think that's going to come down to personal preference, but I would give the nod to the BMW over the Multistrada in terms of the engine, although I really liked both. And speaking about that engine, you can't really talk about it without talking about the different riding modes. So I talked about this as the dynamic package. It's got all 4 riding modes: rain, road, dynamic, and dynamic pro, which you can dial in all the settings. So what I like about that is the fact that you can really feel the difference in each one of those modes. It really does change the character of the bike, but you can certainly feel a difference in the suspension in those different modes. The Ducati also has 4 different modes: urban, something, touring, and sport. Give the nod to the Ducati as far as the different riding modes go. They're more programmable on that Ducati. So there's while you can program the amounts of traction control and wheelie control on this bike, there are more levels that you can program within the Multistrada, and I feel like on that bike, while you can certainly tell the difference in the modes on this machine, it's even more distinct on the Ducati. So I'd probably give the nod there to the Ducati, although this does an exceptional job and they are very well done. The engine on the Triumph, again, I didn't ride that bike, but I did own a 2017 Triumph Trophy SE and put a lot of miles on that machine, a lot of two-up miles on that machine. And while I do realize that Triumph made some, what they would probably say is very significant changes to the engine, it was for all intents and purposes the same power plant, I believe. It was their inline 3-cylinder, 1215 cc's displacement, and that engine really truly is fantastic. So smooth, the transmission is so smooth on it, and I can only imagine that it was just as good, probably better, on the XRT. Now, having said that, I felt that it was so smooth that, you know, it kind of lacked a little bit of character. I like to have a little bit more excitement on my bike, and that was one of the reasons I leaned away from the Triumph. Another big reason I leaned away from the Triumph was after buying 5 motorcycles from the same dealership in the span of, like, I don't know, 7 years. In particular, I bought 4 of them in the last 3 years. Not only could I not test drive the bike, they didn't even have a battery in it and weren't willing to get one in it so that I could view the TFT. And, you know, it left me more than a little bit frustrated. You know, the idea that I might drop $17,000 to $20,000 on a bike and you can't even be bothered to get a battery and put it in the machine so I can take a look at the TFT. Had to break off the relationship with that dealer. But at any rate, I would imagine that the engine on that Triumph is just as good as the one on the Trophy, probably actually better because it's newer and I'm sure they've refined it, and it's on a different bike, right? So I'm sure it's a very good engine, but I definitely feel like it probably lacks the character that the engine in this machine has, and also the one on the Ducati, just having experienced that. Overall, I would give the nod to the BMW out of those 3 bikes I was looking at in terms of the engine. It was very apparent to me when I got off of the Ducati and onto this bike how amazing the brakes were on the BMW. When I owned my 2017 Multistrada, I thought, I mean, it was the first bike that I had that really had premium brakes, and they were excellent. They still are. They're truly excellent brakes that are on that machine. The brakes on this bike, however, even better, in my unprofessional opinion. It is, let's see, what do we got on this bike? Up front, you've got dual BMW branded 4-piston fixed haze calipers, and they are stopping twin 320 millimeter discs up front. In the back, you've got a single twin piston floating caliper stopping on a 265 millimeter disc, braided lines. ABS with cornering ABS, which is going to ensure that you've got plenty of stopping power no matter the riding condition or lean angle. So plenty of bite in these brakes, which is good. because this bike accelerates and goes very quickly, so you want to make sure you have some great stopping power and feel to those brakes, which this does. Hands down, the best brakes I have ever ridden. So yeah, if you're wondering about the brakes, they are excellent. Let's see. The quick shifter, very good. Talk about that, I guess. So the quick shifter, at least on the 2018 Multistrada that I rode, was pretty good. I think all these bikes now have a pretty good setup, up and down. I will say this is a lot smoother than the one on the Ducati. My understanding is the one on the Triumph is just kind of at the top of the mountain. I'm not sure how it could get a whole lot better than what I'm riding, but I do know from riding those Triumphs just how insanely smooth they are, so I can imagine that the shift assist on that is probably pretty excellent. But I will tell you, the one on this bike leaves nothing to be desired, whether you are going up, down. It is excellent. So the quick shifter, very, very good. Wind protection. So the wind protection on these bikes is something to consider. On this bike, you've got basically it's fitted with what they call the tall windshield, which if you've been on the Triumph, you will know that this is not a tall windshield, but it is considered their tall windshield. It very much, this setup very much does the trick. It's got two positions. I have it in the high position, and then this little switch right here, you just fold it down, that's the low position, and very easy. Boom, back up high. So it's very easy to do on the move. I find at 5'10", having it in the up position, all that air goes right up over my head, which is good. I get a nice smooth pocket to ride in, which I like. So that is very good. The one on the Ducati is also very good. It's got a little like pinch mechanism. You can just slide it up and down. So very, very similar as far as the wind protection goes on these two bikes. The wind protection on the Triumph is obviously better than both the Ducati and the BMW. It has a huge windshield, and on that XRT model that I was looking at, it's got an electronically adjustable windshield, which I had on my trophy, and it's one of those things you go, I don't really need it. Don't need it, but I will tell you, it is a wonderful feature to have. So that's very nice as far as that's concerned. So I'd probably give the whole wind protection award to the Triumph, and you're going to be a happy person as far as being shielded from the elements on that machine. I was out and got caught out in a pretty bad rainstorm on this, and I'll tell you, I was very well protected from the front. Didn't have any issues with that, so it did a very nice job. So the wind protection on this bike is very good. I'm not sure if you're 6'5", if you're going to need a taller windshield. That might likely be the case, but I'm not 6'5", so I don't have to worry about that. A couple other things. You've got cruise control, which works very well, very simple. I like having cruise control on my bikes for my long trips. Makes it a lot easier to kind of relax and stay comfortable. Self-canceling indicators on this bike, so you can watch it turn the left indicator on. You're going to see it's going to run only for a split second before it decides, hey, you left me on, I'm going to turn myself off. So that's really nice. I forget what the actual time is on that, but it is, there it goes, turned itself off, which is good for a guy like me who's got the nervous tick of always checking his indicators. So maybe I'll break that habit now that I have self-canceling indicators. So the indicators are self-canceling. What else we got going on here? The heated grips. Ooh, yeah. Let's talk about the heated grips for a minute. I commute regularly to work, so unless there is snow on the ground or freezing rain coming in the winter, I am pretty much riding. So the heated grips are really important to me, and the BMW gets the award for heated grips, at least over the bikes that I was looking at. While I didn't drive the Triumph, as I said, I don't think they changed those a whole lot from the Trophy, and I always found the grips on that Triumph to be kind of weakly heated. The ones on the Ducati were certainly an improvement, and they were fairly good, but nothing compared to what is on this BMW. They will melt your hands off in the highest setting, and that's what I want, especially on those cold days when you're driving into work and it's 25 degrees out. That's Fahrenheit. You definitely appreciate those really warm grips on those days. So the heated grips, definitely excellent on this bike. Let's see, where are we going here? Alright. We are going to switch this display over to Sport once we get going. Let's see here, so you just hit this menu button down. Oh, it's already selected, so go ahead and hit Sport. There it is. So we can see the lean angle in the middle, your braking performance on the right, and if your traction control has been utilized and to what extent there on the left. I really like this screen. I ride around a lot with it on. It's kind of fun, especially checking your lean angle. Kind of geeky, but at the same time, it just adds a little layer of fun to your ride. So I really like that. So I ended up with the BMW in my garage because, you know, I thought it was the best of all worlds, and it really kind of stirred that excitement. You know, the Multistrada did the same thing for me, but the reality there is I already owned one, and I couldn't find a good one for sale around me. Whereas I thought I got a pretty good deal on this machine. I did get $1,000 off of it because it was a demo, even though when I first checked it out, it had 0 miles on it. I had mentioned in my last video that the salesperson told me it had to have 200 miles on it to qualify as a demo to get the $1,000 off. He drove it back and forth to work 3 times, got the miles put on it, and I saved $1,000. So that was definitely fine by me. I want to say I was out the door on this particular bike at something like $21,600 with tax and registration tags, that sort. I did end up putting a $700 warranty on it, which I typically don't, but I absolutely love the dealership that I was working with. The best dealership by far. I'm going to have another video about that, about them specifically and dealers in general coming up, but they were fantastic. This bike comes standard with a 3-year, 36,000 mile warranty, so lots of coverage there. And for an additional $700, I got an unlimited mileage, tire-to-tire warranty for 6 years. So I was really pleased with that and the price of that. I know when I bought my Multistrada, the Everred warranty was like $1,400 to get an additional 2 years beyond the standard 2-year, 24,000 mile that Ducati was offering. So, and I forget what Triumph is. I think it's like 2 years, 20,000 miles. So the warranty award definitely goes to BMW. And then when I can, for $700, get unlimited miles and all the way through 6 years, to me that was a no-brainer. A lot of people fret about the cost of ownership and maintenance, particularly on bikes like the Ducatis and the BMW. I'll say the Triumph is actually pretty cheap in terms of parts and things, almost comparable to your Japanese manufacturers. So what I did is I talked to the service department, and like any place, they offer you, a service package. I was again just really impressed with the package that I was offered. For $1,754, I get 3 years, 36,000 miles, unlimited maintenance package. So the only thing I'm paying for at that point are parts. And I did the cost breakdown before I got it. This bike needed a 600 mile run-in service. It calls for service annually or every 6,000 miles. I will put 8,000 to 12,000 miles on my bike a year. So I'm going to pretty quickly get up to the 18,000 mile service, which on this bike is where you're going to have your valve inspection. I talked to the main supervisor in the service department at the dealership, who informed me that service was going to run me $1,200, assuming that there were no adjustments necessary. And he said he has yet to see an adjustment be necessary, but that if it was, that service could go up to anywhere between $1,500 and $1,800. And then we're looking at about $200 in terms of the other services. So with the number of services I will do, I will get 2 of those valve inspection services at 18,000 and 36,000 miles, and that right there is $2,400. Not to mention all of the oil changes. in between there and my first running service. So I thought that that was going to be a deal that was certainly going to work in my favor. So I missed my turn back there for the interstate, which is no big deal. We're going to loop back around. That way we can get on the interstate. We're going to get on the interstate up here, which will give us a good chance to take a look at the one of the things I haven't talked about yet are the mirrors on the bike. And I will tell you, they are pretty good. No real obvious vibration inside of those. Whoops, I'm just taking a look behind me there. Yeah, so I'm taking a look at the mirrors. They're pretty good. No real obvious vibration inside of the mirrors. And that's a big thing. I like to be able to see very clearly behind me as to what is going on. And I've had bikes in the past where the mirrors are more or less there out of necessity in order to pass inspection, but they don't really work. These are good. I can see really no vibration, pretty good line of sight behind me, no real blind spot, so to speak. Yeah, so the mirrors are good. The wind protection, as I mentioned earlier, very good here as cruising down the interstate. 6th gear, about 5,000 RPM when you're in top gear at 75, very smooth. Throttle input is very good, it's very smooth. Yeah, so all the way around, it's a very comfortable ride. You could certainly eat the miles up on this bike if that is what you're looking to do. And I think that that's kind of that was a little bit of a concern for me when I bought this bike. I was thinking to myself that maybe the Triumph would be it probably is a better mileage eater than this. I knew that going into it. My concern was, would this bike enable me to have all the fun that I want to have when I get down and ride through the canyons or the mountain roads, and also get from A to B on a 4-hour trip comfortably? That was where my concern lied, and I can tell you, I have no issues with it. I've ridden it for quite a long stretch. It's very comfortable, and I'm pleased to report that. So yeah, not a concern you need to have if you're looking at this machine. Alright, let's do a top gear, 6th gear. Let's do a 60 to 80 roll on here. We're going a little uphill. We are at 60 miles an hour there, and roll on. 80 comes up on you pretty quick. We can do the same thing from 40 miles an hour. I think I got a little buffer here before these guys catch me behind me. So 40, come on. Alright, 40, and here we go. 60, and 80. Yeah, so plenty of power, as I talked about earlier on this bike. If you're in top gear there, 40 to 80, not bad. 60 to 80, pretty quick. You'll see right here on the lean angle, it's live, so it's saying 0% lean. It's got a max lean angle to the left at 29, a max lean angle to the right at 32. We'll see as we go around this turn and then turn onto the parkway, heading back towards my house. I think we'll probably have a greater lean angle than that. Well, let's find out. Alright, here we go. We're gonna use quick shifter down. There we go. Yep, so 37 degrees on that turn. Like I said, just kind of a little bit nerdy, but adds a layer of fun to your ride. That's gonna about do it for the riding portion of this review. If you have questions about the bike that I didn't get to, please drop me a comment. I will definitely respond to you. Would really appreciate it if you like what I'm doing. Please go ahead, like the video, and click on that subscribe button. Why not, as I like to say. I intend to keep doing some fun stuff, hopefully some informative stuff, and try to do it in a manner that is fun and easy to watch. So, until next time, keep the throttle back, the rubber down, and enjoy the ride.